All right, it's Jeremy. I'm going to make this quick, not because I need to get a haircut or shave or shower. No, I'm just going to make it quick. Don't judge me. What am I making quick, you wonder? Well, simply this. A number of, I don't know, probably months ago at this point, I put out on my urgency Facebook page, hey, what do you guys want me to talk about? Because I have a bunch of new YouTube subscribers. And Joe Gooch said, what is the self? And I said, don't we all know that? But now I was watching a Jiddu Krishnamurti video. I just like to pronounce it funny in my head. And someone was basically saying, what's there to listen to here? I don't care about armchair philosophy. Jiddu Krishnamurti's just copying Lao Tzu. And I said, that's interesting. It's not true. And we had a little friendly exchange. And I was saying, when you tap into the universal, things start to sound universal. And his response was, well, what if I copy and pasted Jiddu Krishnamurti? Then would I be tapping into the universal? And I think he's still on the vibe that Krishnamurti is copying from Lao Tzu. I'm actually checking the email now just to make sure I've got that right. And I kind of do. So, but I think a larger point there is if you just rehash and repeat what somebody says who has tapped into the universal truth, whatever you want to call it, if you are repeating that, then do you have it? Do you get it? And of course the answer is no. And so all of this sort of ties into what is the self. I think that was Joe Gooch's original question. And so I'm going to answer all of that right now. Well, not the what is the self, but in a roundabout way. Which is simply this. And also I should add that the dude on the YouTube video of Krishnamurti's asking these questions or making these assumptions, perhaps, I looked in at what he likes on YouTube, and it's usually has to do with laws of attraction and that sort of thing. So I get it. Because some of what he was saying was about ESP and healing powers, and like, why, if Krishnamurti really was who he said he was, why doesn't he have these powers that other people have, and all of this. And part one of that answer is that Krishnamurti did have those powers. He just rarely used them, but documented fact that he did. But he spoke about not using them and why. And this is all of a tapestry. And here's the tapestry. Here's what it boils down to. Krishnamurti, what he understood, as with Lao Tzu, as with anyone who's tapped into the universal, is that we tend to see things as, hierarchically, in terms of a spiritual evolution, and maybe people who have ESP powers or healing powers are at a level above where we're at. And whatever you tap into with various meditations or are born innately with as a quote-unquote gift, tap into with yoga, tap into with powerful prayer, these sorts of things. If you tap into them as your egoic self, then you can tap into them and bring back something, some knowledge. You can bring back some useful gift as an accumulation of the self, as something that you add on to yourself. And Krishnamurti was not interested in promoting this. He was interested in the total transformation of people. So the total transformation, meaning the total transcendence, meaning transcending the self, the personal self, and recognizing oneself as the self-awareness of the greatest consciousness of all, in which we are embedded. Not as a theory, but as an actuality. And once one I don't want to say achieves this, but once one is this greater all, that encompasses everything, then those psychic things and all of that flower in you. But then you see them in a different context. You see them how they should be contextualized and what they're for and all of that. But you don't get that lesson as your little self experiencing, say, ESP or, healing people and all that sort of thing. You don't have that larger context to put them in. You just put them in your own context. And I think like laws of attraction and The Secret and all of that, I mean, these are egoic. It's not that they don't work. Again, it's just not what Krishnamurti was interested in. He was interested in the big enchilada. It's like, why half-ass it? But the not half-assing it requires the death of the little self. The laws of attraction and ESP and healing powers, they don't require the death of self. You can actually acquire them for yourself. Part 2 to this big general sweeping answer, is how can you tell the difference? It's really the question, I think, is how can you tell the difference between somebody copying what someone else says and to people having tapped into the same universal truths and understanding the same thing and therefore saying the same thing. Well, again, this is something that I'm sure Lao Tzu said in somewhere, and Krishnamurti has said over and over again, which is, you can't, so don't listen to me. Figure it out for yourself. Do it yourself. I'm just pointing out, I'm not a teacher, I'm just saying, this is how it is. This is how things are in reality, and you should neither believe nor disbelieve. I'm pointing it out. Now you figure it out and do the work yourself. And it might seem a little paradoxical that somebody who said that they were not a teacher ends up doing what we all think is teaching, and upon his death says, do not interpret anything I say, but just put it out there as it is for people to read and to listen to. Why put anything out at all, you might wonder. If we're not to listen to you, why are you speaking? And there's a subtlety there, which is that it has to be said. How do you, if you enter the dream of a person whose house is on fire, and, how do you wake them up? You've got to do something to wake them up because the house is on fire. But it does no good to enter their dream and present them something that they then interpret into the dream. Oh, my dream house is on fire. No, your house is on fire. Wake up. So how do you do that? So there's that subtle thing that if you're going along and listening to, say, a Krishnamurti speech or reading a Krishnamurti speech, your inner critic is, as it's moving through time watching this, picking apart everything, going, oh, that, oh, that, oh. Or going, that rings true, yeah. You're judging things all the time, right? That's just what we do. But if you can turn that process off and actually listen, without the inner critic, just purely listen, and at the end of the entire thing, get what the entire movement of what he was saying was, then perhaps something changes within you. And in fact, something already has. You've turned off the inner critic and listened for the sake of listening. It's already happened. But try doing that. It's really difficult because that's not what we're used to. That's not how we're trained. That's not how we're raised. We want to judge it against things that we've already heard, and what we've already cherry-picked from that makes sense to us. And so it's a difficult thing to do. But that's kind of how you have to view these things and read these things. And at the end of the day, if you yourself end up in universal tapation mode, seeing from the point of view of truth coming out of you as opposed to you coming out of you, then you will understand who, just as an innate talent, gift, whatever, an innate ability, you'll know who's telling the truth, and like who's tapped into the universal and who is cutting and pasting things. From that point of view, you can get it. From this point of view of self, maybe you can, maybe you can't. But either way, it does you no good, because it's all cutting and pasting to you. You've got to be the one who is the universal, self-awareness, self-identity. The universal is already us, right? It's just whether you're conscious and living as that point of view, or living as the little self, trying to make sense of the world, spewing off things that you've heard about the universal, or insights that you've had that trickle in, but nevertheless don't crack the shell of the self for, well, I was going to say butterfly to come out, but I guess butterflies don't live in shells so much. But chickens do. So let out your inner rooster. Cock-a-doodle-doo.